to another video. Last time we left off with Allied tanks in the ruins of Nuremberg, showing obviously American tanks riding through the city of Nuremberg that they had captured by this point. We're now on to fighting in the suburbs of Berlin. April 21st, 1945. Reds enter the German capital. Soviet signalmen string a communication wire across the Spree River above, and artillerymen shell a suburb below. The heart of Germany broke only after enormous pressure was exerted by the Red armies at Frankfurt and Kustrin on the Oder. From that point until the Russians reached the center of the city, they had to fight every inch of the way. Yeah, they get to Berlin, and this is going to be one of the harder fights the Soviets are going to have in Germany specifically. Obviously they had some pretty hard fights in their own country, but the Germans are not going to give up Berlin easily, not by any means. They're going to fight tooth and nail. And you'll hear some of the stories of the soldiers that were on the line at this point for the Germans, and it's like little kids that were like 10 and old men that are like 70 or 80, and it's like they're really throwing everybody in Berlin at the Soviets to try to stop them, and it's just, it doesn't, but it's leads to a lot of suffering, obviously. Boulogne falls at last. April 22nd, 1945. Populace is jubilant. For many months, the Allies had battered the German defenses below Boulogne, Italy. But it was not until the April offensive of 1945 that the strong point fell. Here, American troops of the 34th Division are completely surrounded by civilians as they parade through the streets with flags and banners. The last of the mountain barriers southwest of the city had also been breached, and the American Fifth Army was surging into the Po Valley. The British Eighth Army was pushing up the Adriatic coast toward Ferrara, only 8 miles distant. Yeah, Boulogne, obviously very important city in Italy for the German defense. And they hold it for a long time. Some of that has to do with the winter months. It's a lot of mud fighting, things like that, and it just slows everything down. It's kind of like in the Soviet Union when they're fighting in the winter and things like that, and it's just like mud and muck and um, not necessarily the most conducive fighting, you could say. U.S. legislators investigate Nazi atrocities. April 25th, 1945. Tour Germany. A committee of American legislators went to Germany at the request of General Dwight D. Eisenhower to inquire into atrocity stories on the spot. Inspecting Buchenwald concentration camp above are left to right Lieutenant General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, U.S. 9th Air Force Commander, Representative John C. Kunkel, looks about right, Kunkel of Pennsylvania, Representative Leonard Hall of New York, and Representative Claire Booth Luce of Connecticut. Below, Senator Ernest W. McFarland of Arizona and Senator Burton K. Wheeler of Montana visit Berchtesgaden. Yeah, so people are finding out some of the atrocities here, and they're really seeing the horrors that the Germans committed on some of these people. It's kind of probably best that you have legislators see it, because these people are going to decide the fate of their country as well, and how their country reacts to certain things. And so if they really see, like, this is the horror that was going on in this country, they're going to have maybe a different opinion rather than just like, ah, well, it's not ours, so why do we care kind of thing. Ah, how true are those stories actually? But if they see it firsthand, they can really see the atrocities committed by the Germans. The Reds and Americans meet at Torgau, April 25th, 1945. Hands across the Elbe. Elbe? Soldiers of the United States First Army and the Russian First Ukrainian Army shake hands on a wrecked bridge at Torgau, on the bridge of the Elbe River, where patrols of the two armies made their first handshake meeting. Their first historic, not handshake, my bad, meeting on April 25th. General Courtney H. Hodges' men had come 700 miles from the Normandy beachhead, and the Marshal Ivan S. Koneff's men had come 1,400 miles from Stalingrad to cut the common enemy in the heart of Germany. Yeah, obviously this is kind of a big deal. Americans and Soviets, they've been allies now for a while, but they haven't necessarily met up, you know? And so now they're able to meet up, and they're able to say, hey, look, the enemy is going down. We got this, boys. We met up together. Russians and Yanks march together. April 26th, 1945. Banners are united. Carrying their respective flags, victorious troops of the American and Russian armies march together along the Elbe River, following their historic lineup there. Major General Emil F. Reinhardt, commanding the American 69th Division, third from the right, I believe that would be him or him, one of them. Not third from the right, my bad. Third from the right. So I still don't know. Him, probably, maybe. Chats with Major General Ruskov, commanding the Soviet 58th Guards Division. In the close up below, so here, so I was this guy. I was right. The two leaders shake hands warmly and smile their satisfaction. The East and West now formed a common front, and the doom of Germany was sealed. Yeah, so the now united front makes everything hard for the Germans because now they're being squeezed in at all sides. Where before they had kind of like a two front war, now they have an all front war. Technically, it's just one big front now, but that actually makes it worse. With two fronts, you could kind of delay the enemies on both sides, to kind of slow things down. But here, now they can't. They've been squeezed into a very unwinnable position. And like they said, Germany's doom was sealed. The Russians celebrate junction with allies. April 1945. Salute to victory. As Russian and American soldiers fraternized at the front above, the Soviet home front saluted them in Moscow with a gigantic display of fireworks. 324 anti-aircraft guns shooting round after round of green, yellow, red, and orange balls of fire into the sky. Marshal Stalin exclaimed jubilantly, "Long live the victory of the freedom-loving nations over Germany." Yeah, I mean, they're going to celebrate. You know, they met up and things like that. Although I do think it's very ironic that out of all the people to say such a nice thing, really, it's Marshal Stalin. Yeah, he's really a freedom-loving guy, you know? That old Stalin, yeah. Old Joe there. A camera... let me try... There we go. A camera looks at an Okinawan youngster. April 26th, 1945. Eye to eye. American troops brought with them many strange gadgets, which aroused the curiosity of the natives of Okinawa. Here, A child stares with baleful fascination into the eye of a modern camera. The machinery of modern war must have amazed the natives even more, to say nothing to the Japanese troops. I mean, yeah, probably. How many times have people really seen a lot of this stuff? A lot of this stuff is very new. Modern camera, like they said, it's a very new thing. Not to say the Okinawans haven't seen maybe things like that, but it's a little less likely. They've been under a lot of uh, war at this point now, and they are a little bit less exposed to some of these things. So it probably was really interesting. There's quite a few stories of U.S. troops showing up with certain things, and the natives are like, "Oh, that's really cool. I never seen that before." Or they'll bring candy for the little ones, and that's the kids. That's how they usually tried to win hearts and minds. That was kind of the idea: win hearts and minds, more so than more so than just war. So they bring candy, treats or gifts for the natives, and to try to win them over. Be like, hey, we don't want to harm you. We just don't want the Japanese here. Uninvited guests at Bergstogden. April 1945. GIs take over. The Eagle's Nest atop oh boy, Oberler Salzburg Mountain in the Bavarian Alps, where Mr. Adolf there, in one of his intuitive moods, decided to attack Russia, becomes a rest lounge for American soldiers shown at their ease with one man, while one man stands guard in the window. Battle-weary Yanks of the 101st Airborne Division boated, fished, took sun baths, and rode horses in Adolf's former playground. And there's a lot of these stories where you have GIs just sitting there, and it's like, man, we're just gonna relax. This is great. And there's a lot of stories of them just being like, oh yeah, whatever. Yeah, screw. That's basically a big screw you. And they just rest and relax. And you got to remember, a lot of these guys are they're still pretty young, like uh, younger than 26 and things like that. So they're really, they're in some ways still kids. Obviously, they're fighting war, so they're not really children at that point, but they're still got that youthful spirit in some ways, where they like to be little little annoyances to some people. Um, and this is one of their ways, showing, hey, you know what? We worked hard. I'm gonna get my rest and relaxation right here. And you know what? It'll be at the expense of Mr. Adolf there. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any comments so I can improve these videos, leave them down below. It really improves the channel. And as always, subscribe. It really helps out. Thank you.